Hello, World Forest Focus as the race to the Champions League enters the final straight. Will Nottingham Forest achieve their unlikely dream and get there and maybe win the FA Cup on the way? Joining to discuss what was once a fanciful notion but could actually come to pass is friend of the show, Sky Sports commentator Seb Hutchinson. Seb, how you doing?
I'm good. It's reaching that stage of the season where some teams are probably looking towards the holidays and others certainly aren't. And I think Forest are one of those, aren't they?
Oh man, yeah, certainly aren't. We'll look at a few fixtures actually towards the end. We just, as we record this, it's Monday afternoon, so we're recording this straight after recording with Fletch and Mark and looking at fixtures there, and before Seb commentates on Leicester v Newcastle. And I think I'm just going to assume that Newcastle have wiped the floor with Leicester and hope for a pleasant surprise. But you never know.
So right. Can I just get this straight? You're saying you want Leicester to win? Is that, I'm just getting that.
No, I don't. I mean, we're still getting the Champions League with that.
It's all good. It's all good.
It is. So let's kick off then with the Villa game. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it all, but I suppose the question would be, should I be worried? I saw a few things on Twitter, Forest fans saying, well, if we finish 8th, it's not that bad and all that kind of stuff. Panic stations or no reason for alarm?
Well, I think the panic is just the tension, isn't it? It's that time of the season now where if you're the side in front, if you're the person in front in the race, you're looking over your shoulder and you're not used to being in front in the race. You're always looking over your shoulder and worried about what others are doing. And I think because Villa are in the European mix, it felt like a blow to lose that game. But you're forgetting how good a side Villa are and the squad that they have and the players that they have. And they showed that in the opening stages of the game. And there was maybe a worry that it could have been a worse scoreline at one point in the match. But I think considering the injuries and the situation that Forest are in, 2-1, I think it's one of those results you just take it and you move on to the next one. You just got to tick these games off. Every week that passes, you're a step closer to the goal, even if you lose. And I say that because other teams, because of your points advantage, however small you may feel it is, other teams still need to make up that advantage every week. So, and I think this weekend that didn't really happen. So maybe in a strange way, Forest got away with one by losing and other teams not winning. So I would try and get a positive out of the weekend if you can. And especially in the second half, I thought Villa weren't great, actually. And Forest did well to try and dig deep. And who knows, if Murillo's effort had been just dipped under the bar, you'd all be feeling a lot differently.
Yeah, oh man, I'd love it if you're the man who's commentating when one of those Murillo wonder goals goes in. I'm looking to see what you bring to the table there.
Well, he's got the letter O on the end of his name, so he's in for a long one, I think. It's interesting because Forest are going to be one of those teams probably in the last month of the season when the title's already decided, relegation's done, and teams like Manchester United and Spurs have nothing to play for. I mean, they already have nothing to play for, but the direction will be not to show their games. The focus will be on Forest at that point, I think, and that's when we'll get those big moments. I think the back end of the season is what I love doing in this job. Those moments which you feel just change a whole fan base's emotion about their team from one goal or one game. And those defining games that go down the years. That was the game in which I think it's a league season with 38 matches. But supporters always look back and go, that was the game. That was the game where we thought we're safe. That was the game where we sealed European football. That was the game where we won the title. And I'm trying to think, what game is that going to be for Forest? Because I think, just say they have a bad couple of weeks and some of the other teams have a good couple of weeks, you're still in the mix. It doesn't really matter. So you're really looking ahead and thinking, we're getting into May, and nervous May. Forest have got a home game against Leicester in that period. I'm just saying. I'm just making the point. And there's some really interesting fixtures against teams where where it would be tough to call the game, actually. I'm thinking Palace away, for example, is one that if Forest could win a game like that, that could be the one that just decides everything at that point. Because I think at that stage, there'll be 3 games left. And I don't think at this point, I mean, you tell me differently. I don't think at this point, you just want to get over the line, don't you? Just get that Champions League place. If it's 3rd, if it's 5th, and it will be 5th. We just need one more English team to win in Europe, and the fact that Chelsea are in that competition that they're in, I think that's going to happen. So you should be looking at 5th, and I'm sure you are.
Oh yeah. Oh man, absolutely. Yeah, I'm looking at 5th. We'll look at some fixtures as well. And when you started talking about that, I did get my phone out straight away, and my mind went to Leicester. Leicester at home on May the 10th. 3 games to go, penultimate home game. Went straight there. It was
that would be a tough one. It would be a tough one to take. It would be a really tough one to take if Leicester, already relegated, stinking the place out, haven't scored a goal up to that point, and they nick it on the day. That would be a tough one, wouldn't it? But it's not going to happen, Matt, is it? It's not going to happen. Football doesn't do that to supporters. Never does that. It never does that. You probably have it sealed by then.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't. I'll touch wood. I don't think it will go to the last day. I'm still optimistic. It's funny, the game against Southampton at home that you famously did with the Danilo goal was the one that first season, and then second season, maybe it was Arsenal at home. Actually, I mean that was the penultimate game, but there are those ones that stick in your mind, certainly. So you're right about that. What's the shirts behind you, out of curiosity? I haven't asked you that before we started recording.
Do you want to try and guess?
There's one Peru. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think I'll give you a bit more. Does that help you? I don't know how good the resolution is.
I don't think it matters. No, you're going to have to tell me.
I don't think so. You got South Africa.
Okay.
You have Peru.
I got Peru, yeah. One Ecuador?
Yeah, Ecuador. What's this one here? What's that one? Do you remember that one? 98? France 98?
Colombia?
No, Jamaica.
Okay.
Yeah, so
yeah, that one's Ecuador.
Colombia next to it.
Yeah.
And Georgia. I do actually have Ecuador. I think it's fallen on the floor somewhere anyway, somewhere around. Oh no, it's over there. I can see it. I do have Ecuador. I quite like yellow international kits. Although saying that, I don't actually have a Brazil one. I just think it's too obvious. So I like to rack up the kits. I do have Romania somewhere as well, so I don't know how many more I'm missing. But
why Georgia? Because they were fun at the last Euros.
Yes. Yeah. They had an amazing tournament. Let's be honest. And even when they took the lead against Spain, it was just, I was in the stadium for that. It was straight after the England game with the Bellingham overhead kick, Slovakia game. And that was an interesting day, because I was in the media centre. We were watching the game in the media centre, and there's so many British journalists in there. It's incredible. It wasn't even a game involving England. And I heard, we were on a delay, so I heard a cheer from outside, within the stadium. Would have been Spain supporters and Georgia supporters, a really loud cheer. So we assumed that England had lost, because we thought, well, they're delighted that England are out. It was the complete opposite. It was the fact that Bellingham had scored. So we forget, we think about this whole idea as, oh, people don't like England or people don't like these countries. But so many supporters now, they just support the players. Yeah. So this is a Real Madrid player scoring the goal. That's what so many of the supporters cared about, which I found, I'm trying to think if I ever, growing up watching tournaments, if I ever felt, was I following players or following teams? I felt more following teams, but who knows? But we're going off topic, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. One other off-topic comment. I mean, yeah, the face of football is changing, and you commentate for Sky, so I can't ask you about the Baller League, but I've got my opinions on the way the game's going in that aspect, certainly. Let's look at fixtures then. I want to get your take on this. We did this on Monday's show, as mentioned, so I'll see what Seb makes about this, and then we'll discuss injuries and a few other bits as well. But this is apologies again for the graphic. It's not perfect, but people can read it while we're on screen. These are the fixtures for the teams in the Champions League race. I've tagged Fulham on the end, as I said on Monday. They're sort of in it, but they also have a very big hand in who will make it. When you look at these fixtures, and you probably know quite a lot of them anyway, how are you viewing the big picture of the Champions League race?
Well, I think a few weeks ago, I genuinely thought Manchester City would start racking the wins together. I even thought they might maybe close in on Arsenal, but I think I slightly underestimated, almost in a weird way, them staying in the FA Cup has probably affected that as well. I think that so many of the players are just thinking, let's win that competition, scrape into Europe, and we'll see how it goes. So they are a really tricky one to work out right now. As for everybody else, I think Newcastle have got the momentum. I think that buzz of winning the trophy as well carries them through. They are in a situation where their squad is, how can I say, it's like any of these teams, Chelsea aside, mind, where a few injuries and it destabilises everything. I think Forest are obviously feeling that a little bit now. Villa have got this big week. I think the fact they beat Forest was huge for them, because I thought they might just take their eyes off the ball with PSG to come. That didn't happen for them. And then look at the fixture they have next. So, yeah, who knows with Southampton now? Now it's done. Who knows what they might come up with? But any of the sides that have, Ipswich, Southampton, or Leicester in the remaining games, there could be that real feeling, and there could be a tension within those games anyway, because the expectation is, okay, we'll get 3 points there, we'll get 3 points there. I think it is a cliche to say, of course it is cliche. I mean, we love cliches. You want to be the team with the points on the board at this stage. 7 games left. Forest are in a situation where they could have closed the gap on Arsenal, but I think you almost maybe forget about Arsenal for now, because they have 5 points, and you're looking at it and you're thinking 6 points above Villa now, aren't you? 6 points above Villa. So that is you're knocking off a couple of, just say you lose, they have to win 2 games, you have to lose 2 games, you knock that off, you're down to the final 5, you're chipping away. You're asking, are any of these teams going to win all of their matches? No. So let's say Fulham aren't a threat to you. I don't think Fulham are going to catch you, to be honest. I mean, 10 points is a lot for them to make up. So you're looking at who they're playing. Now, they have Chelsea at home. You can see Fulham winning that game. Absolutely. They have Villa away. Again, they can cause problems. They're the awkward team that you'll be glad that they're in the mix for those sides. You're then looking and seeing, do any of them play Liverpool? Will they have won the title by then? I think Chelsea's home match against Liverpool, the fact that Liverpool didn't win yesterday, brings that more into focus again. It could be the day they're either sealing the title or Chelsea have to watch them walk out, as champions. That could play a part. But Chelsea have got some really tricky ones. I think Fulham away for them is tricky. Newcastle away, the fact they're playing each other, that's a win-win for Forest there. And if you want to go into forensic detail, and I think for me to do that now would probably bore everybody. But if you do it, if individuals do it themselves, just go and think through and think, if any of these sides are facing each other, then they both can't win, right? So therefore, there's another game to tick off. So the fact you've got Villa facing City in late April, that's another game where Villa have to make up ground on you. So at the same time, possibly denying Manchester City points. The more you go into this, the more detail you go into this, the more you feel, well, we can, from a Forest point of view, we can lose a couple of games and we'll still be okay. And I think the last time I came on, or the last time I really looked into this, maybe a couple of months ago, I haven't changed my opinion on that. You still had an advantage then, and that advantage is still there. And that's having had that in the middle of February where there was a little bit of a wobble. And if you take this Villa game out, you're in form. You're on a roll still. So if anybody's watching and seeing this fixture, just freeze it, go through bit by bit, and I think it'll make you feel better.
I think so, certainly. Slightly tangential question, but still relevant. What did you make of the end? I mean, the Manchester derby in general was absolutely horrific, but the end, such a lack of urgency from City. They seemed very happy to take a point. It was almost like a pre-season exhibition game in America or something. What did you make of all that?
It's the worst covering City this season. Actually, I'm trying to go back now. It's one of the most lackluster, slightly. I felt, because I obviously heard Gary Neville talking about it yesterday, and I felt this way for some time myself, that when that football's not sparkling and the top players are not clicking into gear and not doing things quickly and making things happen quickly, and it goes slightly pedestrian and people use the word robotic, it's not the football anybody wants to see. Who wants to see that? what we saw yesterday in the Manchester derby from both sides. Obviously, Manchester United are scared that maybe City might pick them off. So they always have numbers behind the ball. When they break forward, they don't look like they're going to score. They don't look like they have the quality in their side. And that's why where they are in the league. And then from Manchester City's point of view, I just thought some of their key players are either going through a crisis of form in Phil Foden's case, or this is just coming to an end. The cycle's coming to an end. Maybe a few of the players are thinking, we've done enough now. I mean, we know De Bruyne is leaving, but even someone like Bernardo Silva, how much more does he really want to keep going in this style of play, in this system? Maybe he wants a fresh new start. Gundogan came back again. Has it really worked? They've brought in new players, a lot of young players they've brought in. And they were fortunate, well, not fortunate, but they were one of the only clubs to seriously invest in January just to add bodies, add freshness. If they hadn't done that, who knows where they'd be? They might be another side you could just tick off. But that's what I've liked about Forest this season and why I like doing their games. I like doing their games since they've come back up anyway, but I think particularly this season because it's a style of football that when you're watching as a neutral and you're watching the games, you feel like anything can happen at any time. There's no predictable pattern to the match. Think about, I did the Newcastle Forest game and it was such a bizarre match in so many ways. I mean, Forest had such a great start and then Newcastle just blew them away for the rest of that half. And then the second half was bizarre. It was sort of Newcastle sat off and invited pressure. And who knows, another couple of minutes and Forest could have drawn that game. But that's what I want from matches when I'm covering them. I don't want to see what I saw in the Manchester derby yesterday. I covered it, do a show called Premier League Data Zone, which is more to the world is rather than the UK. And again, you're trying to get stuff out of the game because you have data to hand. So that gives it something. But I know it sounds crazy to say, I was getting angry internally commentating on it. I was huffing and puffing to myself within my brain. Obviously, it would sound strange on commentary if I was going, oh, come on. But I don't think is there anybody who would have enjoyed anything from that game yesterday? Except maybe Forest going, well, that's 2 points drop from City or, But on another day, you think, well, why couldn't Manchester United win that game? If you can't beat a Manchester City like that, then when can you beat them? And they just seem to be hanging in there. Let's stop talking about those two teams. Let's just park it there and go back to talking about Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, let's do that. It wasn't just a tangent. I was just struck by the scenes at the end. It was very weird, certainly. We'll get Seb's take on just the injuries and if that worries him at all. But just before that, a word for the Trent Navigation, and we'll see you in about 50 seconds.
Hey up me duckies, a quick rundown of match days at the Big Shed. We're open from 10, serving full English breakfast, teas, coffees, and believe it or not, beers. Father's Footy Quiz is followed by the lunchtime kickoffs, and the outdoor kitchen is fired up from midday, serving sourdough pizzas, burgers, hot dogs, pies, and sausage rolls. Lovely. Pints start at £4. We have a great selection of cask ales and lagers to lubricate the vocal cords for a bit of a sing-song before the game. After the match, we've got some great DJs and live bands booked. So get your send down to the Trent Nav. Win or lose, we're having a booze. And if we draw, we'll have some more.
Lovely stuff. Thanks very much.
Solid rhyming there.
Very Nottingham indeed, yeah. Good to have Seb on to get a sort of a neutral point of view then about the injury situation. Chris Wood, I'm sort of hearing conflicted things about him. He could be back for Everton. He could miss the whole season. Who knows? Olorena, 3 to 4 weeks, 3 to 6 weeks. I'm not sure on him either. Elango, I think, hopefully is fine. I'm not, as we record this, hopefully he's fine. I might blow up in my face. And then Tyro, poor old Tyro as well, getting injured. When you look at our squad depth in general, do you think we've got enough, or are some red flags there for you if these players do miss a really substantial amount of games now?
Well, it's always red flags, isn't it? When you've had players, sort of Einer's case, who's performed, had a really good season. But I think, in recent weeks, maybe it's starting to catch up, that energy and that exertion. on certain players. And Forest aren't the only club to pick up injuries, but I think part of the reason why they've done so well is to have that situation. We spoke about it earlier this season where you'd have that first 11 play well, but then the subs would come on and they would play well. But now the subs are having to start the games, and you're then in a situation where you're giving more minutes to players maybe, or more players that are on the bench that maybe you thought, well, we need them to step up now. And I think injuries are one of the worst things about football, but they do give players opportunities. And who knows, there could be a player who could become a hero. Obviously, we saw Jota. It's interesting with him because Jota Silva, the start of the campaign, I remember Forest supporters calling for him. He should be starting. Why isn't he starting? Get him in the team. I think it was after the League Cup match he scored. And then after that, he had a few games. People were like, oh, no. I think just stay as a bench player. But he's going to be needed. I mean, let's see how Alanga is. I don't think there's anything alarming necessarily. But he's, look at, you think the run he did yesterday. Sorry, where are we now? We're Monday, aren't we? The run he did against Villa and the goal against Manchester United. These sprints, these moments, these are just moments in games, but footballers are doing these sort of situations constantly through games. We have like a metric where we're measuring sprints that players do within matches, and certain position requires sprinting. A lot of it's to do with recovery runs rather than on the ball. That's when players tend to hit top speed in games, is when they're recovering back to get back into position. And this, I say, unseen element of football is part of the load that's put onto players. And we think of the number of games, but it's not really about the number of games. It's how many days they are training. How often are they having to train at a level that prepares them for games to play at the level that they need to play at to win matches. And the squads, there's a trade-off, because if you have a big squad, you're trying to keep lots of players happy. And you think maybe in Chelsea's case, for example, it makes it difficult maybe to get a proper fluid team. Forest have had we looked at the squad and thought it's relatively big at the start of the campaign, but everybody seems to be pretty happy and it seems to be working. Let's just take it like this. There can be concerning elements you see in games and you think this is going to be a trend. But let's be frank. They lost away to Aston Villa. That can happen. Liverpool could have lost away to Villa. Arsenal won that game, but they could have easily lost on the day. Teams can lose at the Villa Park, and Forest lost 2-1 with injuries, slight change in system, players not in usual roles, etc. I'm trying to think of a way to sort of say that if we look at the knocks that players are picking up and the injuries that they have, there are also players that you don't know about that are playing through pain because they're asked to, because we need you to. And these are the things that can then catch up with players. And we don't know that information. We can't be sure of that, because you don't want to accuse a club of that. You don't want to put people under pressure in that way. But so many players will tell you, and even ex-pros will tell you, how often they were 100% in matches. And you've got to dig deep and push through and if required, make it. So I think if there's a player who's can play and they need him, he will play. I think Alanga's in that position. They sort of need him to be playing now, especially with the strikers potentially missing, both of them. So you're going to need that. So I think that will play a part. I just don't see this stage of the season whereby you're having to put youth team players into matches. I think you've got enough cover just about now. You can usually get a look at the bench. It's still filled with senior pros. I know Abbott's on there, but this is still not a desperation. I'm trying to think of that. Look, there is a bit of concern, but you're not the only club in that position, and the points advantage helps you massively.
Yeah, I think so. I agree, certainly. What about poor old Taiwo then? He's a big discussion amongst Forest fans. I think you're an admirer of his from his early Premier League days. Are you seeing a big drop off this season or not?
I understand. It's understandable, isn't it? He's not. He had injury last season. He's had injuries this season. He's not had to run in the side because of Chris Wood's form. Don't underestimate that broken nose. It was, I was there in the ground. At first, at the moment, I was seriously concerned because we didn't show it on the coverage, but I obviously could see those angles. And we tend to do that. If it looks quite sickening, we tend not to show it because, especially nowadays, where people clip things up and just put it out for their own gratification. It's just really strange. But I was seriously worried for him because the look on his face, the way he went down. You know, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to try and guess what I thought he was going through, but it seemed quite serious. And that he was able to be playing not long after that, again, goes back to what I was saying about players having to play through pain. We can't underestimate a situation like that, what it does to you. And we're talking about, we say this when we're watching football, that the level is so high that just one little element can just knock you down enough to make it look as if you're not playing very well at all. But that's because of the standard of your opposition. So he could maybe have played in a cup tie against Exeter a couple of weeks later and been fine, or the game against Ipswich. But then he's playing against Ipswich. I know they had a slightly second string out. They weren't great on the night. Forest get through. It's better at this point in the season to say this guy has to play if he's fit. But going forward, and you're looking at the situation now, am I right in saying his contract is it 2027? I'm trying to think.
I think so. He was signed 2022 on a 5-year deal. So yeah, it would be.
Yeah. So he'd be 2027, and Einer's this summer, isn't he? So
well, he's got an option that the club could exercise. So I think he'll be here, but you want him to sign a new deal, obviously. Yeah.
You need to sign it, even with him injured. You want him to sign a new deal. So you know with Awani that he's not going to be. He's going to be around, isn't he? I don't think in the condition he's in, you're not going to get big money for him right now. And there's going to be concerns about his fitness and everything else. And he's been, we saw the reaction when he scored. I think it was away at Wolves, wasn't it? Where he, the way that the team and the group gathered around him. He's a popular member of the squad. He's happy being part of this season as well. Maybe he thought, he wouldn't have believed that Forest would be in this mix, and he'll want to hang around and play Champions League football. But I have changed my tune from the start of the season based on what we've seen in that Forest need a striker. They need to invest in a striker in the summer.
Let me ask the same question. Apologies, people who are listening to this, and we're discussing quite similar topics to what we discussed on Monday, but I don't mind that at all. It's good to get a different take. We did our live show, and I said this on Monday as well. We did our live show last week and took a straw poll of the audience around would they rather sign Cunha for a reported £60 million release clause or Delap for a £40 million release clause. And you can throw other names in. There's obviously, Gyökeres and Huthinson have been mooted, which feels a bit fanciful, but you never know. But what's your take on summer business and that kind of striker then, Seb?
Well, Gyökeres, if you could get him, then obviously that would be a good option. And he's an interesting player in many ways. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced he's the right fit for Arsenal, for example, who's been heavily linked with. And then I'm looking around and thinking, who else is the team for him? And the money required to get him out of Sporting, I know it's a target, but I think it's certainly in the target for a side like Forest to be in the mix. He'd be an excellent signing for Forest. He'd be brilliant for Forest. He's a player who, if he's got a bit of room to run into, and we know that's how Forest play, he can be a devastating player. He's strong, he's quick, he's got one of those. It's a voracious eye for goal. If he's got a chance to get a shot away, he will. There won't be people going, well, go on, shoot. He'll shoot before the fans tell him to shoot. I am a bit surprised. He hasn't got subtlety in his play. He hasn't got the ability to maybe bring others into the game as well as other strikers, which might, maybe at the very top level, might just hamper him. But is he an improvement on Wood and Awani? Yeah, I believe he is. I actually believe he is. So Forest need to be in the mix for that. But if we're saying that they're going to be getting into a fight with other clubs over this sort of stuff, and they want to stay out of that and maybe move on to another one, for me, I think Liam Delap has to be an option. Has to be over Cunha. The reason why I say that is because I think Cunha would obviously be a popular player at Forest and be one of those maverick players who could produce something. But at the same time, who knows in the season if things aren't going very well or the results aren't going very well, will he start to get a bit funny about it and think, oh no, have I made the right move? Should I have gone here? Will his form drop? Or will he play as he has for Wolves? I think that unknown element is difficult. Whereas I don't think Delap would be like that. I think he's had a taste of the Premier League. He's done well for Ipswich. And Nottingham Forest feels like a good next step for him. it just feels like a nice fit. And I don't think it would really not rock the boat with Awani or Wood, because I think in many ways, if you are going to have European football, in fact, let me rephrase that. You're going to have European football, so therefore, having those three strikers is going to be really important. You're going to need that squad to be big and to be, ready to play at all times when you're competing in 4 competitions.
Do you think the club have taken flack very rarely this season, but there was people saying, this exposes the error in January of not getting another forward option when you've got a 33-year-old and Taiwo's injury condition. Was that an error, or do you take? I think the stance they took was they tried to buy Vesta and there was no deal to be done, and there were obviously other names, but they decided to keep their powder dry till the summer. Where's the balance of right choice, wrong choice lie, do you think?
Well, why has that been proven? But because Awani, the strikers have got injured. Is that the?
Yeah, that's what people are saying. Now we're left with Elanga up front.
So if you, exactly. But if you're not going to get that striker that's going to take you to the next level in January, it's just not going to happen, because other clubs are interested as well. So it'd have to be an opportunistic deal. Why on earth would Brentford have sold him in January? I never believed that was on the table. Summer is the time. January is the time to, if you have a serious issue. How can a side who are in third in the Premier League have serious issues when they're a side that weren't expected to be third in the Premier League? The season's going well. Just keep your powder dry, get yourself through to the season, qualify for Europe. And I didn't think even in January that Forest were going to be slipping out of the European places. And you look at the table as well, it's so tight. There's in that area, there's teams taking points off each other every week. You don't want to be investing, especially when you consider the PSR and all this stuff that I hate talking about that part of it. But if you're, and it's the fact that fans have to talk about this stuff. Why do we want to talk about money and and returns and on investments and things like that? But these players, the players that you need to move things on. You're talking about Cunha, who he wasn't just linked to Forest in January. These are players who you're not going to get out of their clubs in the Premier League. So then you're looking maybe into Europe and saying, are we going to get a player? We're going to take a gamble on bringing somebody in January. They may need to acclimatise. Not many players come in from abroad, hit the ground running, unless the platform is there for them to do it. Who knows if they might not get the game time? You buy a striker from abroad and you have to work them in. So you then drop in Chris Wood in that period. What do you do? I think it's just fans get tetchy, don't they? They think, we've got this advantage. We've got to make sure we do not let it slide through our fingers. But to get those players to take you next level, it requires planning. It requires foresight. You need to make a connection with the player, make sure that they want to join the club, feel like they're bought into the project. There's so many people involved. Every signing, it takes time, and I think panic buying, it just rarely works.
And I think that signing, in the end, if they were going to make one, it was going to be, we signed Origi and we signed Rodrigo Ribeiro, who people will have forgotten. I think I'd rather see Anthony Elanga and Jota Silva up front than Origi and Ribeiro type players. So I think it was worth rolling the dice, and I still think we'll be okay. But I can see what people are saying, but clubs don't carry 3 strikers in the world of PSR, really. Forest are probably going to do it next year, but that's because of Europe. But even City, they've got Haaland and Marmoush. They don't have a third striker. Phil Foden's their third striker, I guess. So yeah, that's the way it goes. Certainly. The other topic I want to discuss with Seb before we let him go to travel to see Leicester get battered is just around experience and a bit on the FA Cup. But just before we do that, just a quick word of thanks to Vesta Blinds for their support. As ever, if you're looking for made-to-measure shutters or blinds in the East Midlands, do check them out, vestablinds.com. And you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, the number on the screen, but info@vestablinds.com if you want to make any inquiries. Have I asked this before? What's in your shed? I think I might have. Are we shutters or blinds?
I think we did. We went through this, didn't we? I didn't. They came with these blinds, so I've not really looked into them.
That's right. You've got blinds, though. Yeah. Not curtains. No,
not in here. Yeah, curtains.
Yeah.
Some sort of mold or fungus growing on it by now if it was curtains.
Lovely. That's a good advert for not buying curtains. There we go.
Exactly.
Let's just talk. This first question will lead into the second, I think, but I haven't really discussed about lack of top end of the table experiences in our squad. I think City would obviously have far more. Newcastle largely have the players who got in the Champions League. Villa did get in the Champions League. Chelsea maybe have a bit less. I don't know without thinking about it. But is this a disadvantage to Forest going into these final weeks or not?
I don't know. I think it's arguably more relevant in the FA Cup than it is in the league. I think it's just players, just league games. I don't think they're necessarily thinking of the bigger picture unless you are, I would say, in a title race and it's starting to get tight towards the back end of the season. I think Champions League place jostling, I don't think so. I just don't think players really, and you can tell this just from watching the game. I think if things aren't going right in the game, it's just because a Forest player has been outclassed in a moment or something like that. I really don't think so. And look, if Nuno was nervous about this, he's got just the best face for not showing that. It's just I have to say I've loved him this season. And it's not just because he's rocking a similar beard to mine. I think it's just the fact that I've just loved seeing him smiling this season. I've just loved the joy he's got out of the cup run, the joy he has in taking a side potentially to the in fact, taking a side to the Champions League. It's for managers, it's such a high pressure job to be able to get that joy. And it's been genuine joy, you know. And usually managers try quick to play stuff down, but anytime it's been good moments for us, I think he's really got into that. Think of all the penalty shootouts, and you've had so many. I mean, it's mad how many penalty shootouts you've had in one season. It's absolutely crazy. But every single one of those, when he's been sat there, felt like a supporter watching. You see him, and he's sort of hidden. He's hidden in the dugouts. He's been crouched down. He's been sat with no emotion, just tense, because he knows every time that Forest have got through one of those penalty shootouts, it's one step closer to an amazing moment. And I think facing City in a semi-final has taken away a bit of pressure from Forest. From if they had faced Palace or Villa, of course, there would have been the feeling of we can win this game and you can still get to Wembley. But you can beat City. You've beaten them recently. But if the City were to turn up and turn it on, then there'll be an saying, well, it's really disappointing, but it was Manchester City. And you'll look back and go, well, it was just that pet period and we're upset. But if you were to face Palace and lose to Palace in a semi-final, which is perfectly possible because they're a tough side, I think it would have been harder to take. But I think that semi-final is going to be, it must be quite a nice feeling because you've got two things going on here. And you can have each Premier League game, right? We can get in the Champions League, those big Champions League nights, those big European nights returning to the City ground. But on the same side, a cup final, but we're going to Wembley anyway in a cup semi-final. It's like two nostalgic moments, right? You know, that feeling running through your veins as a fan of we could be in a cup final. We can be in Europe again. This is great. This is what, you know, there's going to be Forest supporters who have absolutely no connection with those days at all. You know, there would have been there's some watching who were, I'm trying to think now. I mean, they wouldn't have been born when Billy Davies was managing. You know, this is the sort of situation, how things can change quickly and a new set of supporters. You're going to be earning new fans from this season as well. That's another big part of it. So you have to try and suckle that in. There's only so many sides can win trophies, and Newcastle have had that moment this season, which has been good to see. And if we could try and spread some of that joy around, that would be great. So let's see. You know, I think there's no hiding it. I think everybody looking at the FA Cup when it was the quarterfinals, if you could have taken Manchester City out, then I think the general public were like, this would be amazing for any of these clubs if they could win it. And so we're still in that situation. City is still in it. So we can still end up with just them lifting the trophy. And that's great for their supporters. But from a general view, I mean, how amazing would it be if Forest can get through to that final?
Yeah, I do think we're definite underdogs. And I don't mind that because obviously we've got no Yates, no Nico Williams. We might not have Chris Wood, Aina, you know, that long list. But I wouldn't rule us out. I mean, apologies for invoking that awful game yesterday again, but Man United gave them a game, so there's no reason why Forest can't in any circumstances, I would say. Have you commentated on any of our penalty shootouts yet or not this season?
Yeah, two of them. I did Exeter and Ipswich.
Exeter, yeah.
And Ipswich as well. That was a strange game. That I just thought Ipswich weren't great. I was really underwhelmed with just their approach, the side they picked, and that would have been a really miserable night if Forest had gone out to Ipswich on that night. I think it might have had a knock-on effect on the league form, and you could see the way Nuno celebrated at the end. You know, I can't remember which round it was. Was it Aina on his back, or was he on Aina's back? I can't remember which way.
It was Aina. He was carrying Aina. Yeah,
I was going to say, I don't think Marinakis would have liked that too much. See one of his players carrying the manager, but I saw about the penalty shootouts were brilliantly planned as well. They had a set number of they had a set order, which was exactly the same as from the Exeter game to the Ipswich game. And obviously, with the absentees in the following the round after, they had to change the order, but they still got over the line ultimately. In a tougher game, going away wasn't a great game. That one, I think that was a really strange match. I think it was I've said this to somebody before, but it was a victim of the previous two meetings with Brighton in the season. I think maybe Nuno went, we're going to try and play a bit differently, and Brighton went, we're going to try and play it a bit differently, and it just the whole game changed. Anyway, you don't need to worry about that. You moved on. It's on to City in the cup.
Last question: in those shootouts, did you detect kind of a swagger and a mentality that probably comes from the way they're drilled just on during games in the 90 minutes? But the way they went about those penalties, they sort of had a little bit of an air of, well, we're going to win this. They're certainly expanding from cells outwards, I felt. Did you feel that in the ground or not?
Yeah, I felt there's been a slight swagger about so many Forest players this season. And it was interesting when Yates stepped up, part of me thought, oh, Ryan, it feels like it's made for him to miss, isn't it?
It did, yeah.
Forest through and through. He's going to be inside. Like, I've got to score. I think you could see the relief with the celebration. It was always Adebayor-esque, wasn't it? But I think at the end of the day, they've had that edge to it. You can even tell by the celebrations of goals. There has been a sense of, we belong here. We belong at this point of the league. Why shouldn't we be in this mix? When we don't, there's no inferiority complex. I don't feel that's the case. I don't think this season. I think there was the second half against Liverpool where the Forest really penned in the game of the City ground, where they were really lucky, rode their luck to it was the end. But Liverpool have done that to lots of teams this season. But other than that, there's been games where it's not quite gone their way, or they've had some heavy defeats here and there. But I've never felt it's knocked the team to the point where the season feels like it's going off the rails. And for that, I don't know what's created that. I mean, it would be amazing to bottle it and take it forward. And that's why it feels so good. If Forest could get a cup final out of this and get in the Champions League, then you're taking something away from the season that you can look back on. Sometimes, just say the season ends and Forest finish fifth and get knocked out of the semi-finals. It's almost a bit, well, we've done well. We're now looking forward to next season and European games. That season might get slightly forgotten as time goes on if that's the progress of the club. So let's hope they could take something away from it. The swagger has been notable. I totally agree with you. I think there's been, and you've got players here who are starting to feel. Look at someone like Murillo, right? He's come into the Premier League and he's been turning heads, and people have been interested in him. The fact the club is like, he's probably going to games now thinking, well, yeah, this is what I expected to be. I expected to be a top player and playing at this level. Hudson-Odoi, he was there for Chelsea. He's been in this position. Gibbs-White's now an ambitious player who wants to be starting for England, who wants to be mixing in this. They're not thinking, oh, we're doing so well to be here. Maybe Ryan Yates is deep down. He must be living in dreamland to a certain extent. But if you start bringing in players with a mentality of we belong, then you start forgetting about this stuff. The idea of being inexperienced in European races goes out the window. These are professionals, top professionals who feel they belong in the Premier League, and they'll hope it's enough to take them over the line.
Hopefully so. Hopefully so. We shall leave it there. If you've enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe. If you become a member or sign up for Patreon, you get early access to all interviews like this, or just give us a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Seb, thank you very much. Have you got any Forest games coming up that you know of?
Do you know, I don't think so, because I don't have my games for late April and early May, and as it stands, I don't have a Forest game on the cards. I think I have. Oh no, I'm talking absolute rubbish. I've just realised it's a Monday night football. Certain Monday night football against Spurs.
Ah, lovely, lovely.
That's Easter. Oh, it's Easter Monday, isn't it? That's Easter Monday. Yeah. So I'll be on that game, and that could be one of those games, because Tottenham are how can I say this? They are in a very interesting place, and they couldn't feel more removed from where Forest are at the moment. You know how the fans feel about their manager, the way they play. So that'll be a really interesting game. I wonder how Nuno will approach that one. But look, there's games to go before then, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. God, if we can just beat Everton, I'm going to sound like a typical fan here, but if we can just beat Everton and get everything well relaxed again, then
take each game as it comes. That's the route.
Exactly. Thanks to Seb. Thanks for everyone's company. Do us a favour, hit like on this if you haven't already and you're watching on YouTube. That would be very much appreciated. We'll be back tomorrow with our match preview for the Everton game. If we don't see you for that, we shall see you soon.